name Bad Snacks, it's kind of like a really lame inside joke a little bit, where my producer friend and I, we were working in the studio and I kept naming my tracks after like really dumb things, like just like a smattering of letters. And like one day he brought this bag of carrots into the studio and they'd been like sitting in the car, so there was like a bag of hot carrots, so we like named the track Bag of Hot Carrots because it was the only thing I could see, and I was like totally done with inspiration for the day. So then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we named all the tracks after Bad Snacks? So then it became like a thing. And then the little Bad Snacks, the little part, that's like a joke because obviously I'm not a rapper, but people get it mixed up all the time and they call me Little Bad Snacks. So this isn't my first year at NAMM, but this year, it's a totally different experience this year because last year at NAMM, I came just to kind of be, I don't know, a guest and to check things out. And this year I actually have more relationships with like NS Designs, the company that makes my violin, and then with Roland, which is the company that makes the SP404. And I'm super into pedals, I'm super into gear, I've always have been, I love synths. So this year it was about, you know, saying hey and hanging out, but also like checking out what's new. There's a lot of really cool pedals coming out that are like super new and super innovative this year that I'm like really excited about, and some new synths too. So yeah, and NAMM is just always, even though it's like huge, it's always a good hang. The organelle is in my productions a lot, for sure. The SP404 is in my production a lot as well. Obviously I use my violin all the time. I do use a lot of Maris pedals, so I've been using the Maris Enzo, which is an instrument to synthesizer pedal. I've also been using the Auto Bit a lot, which is basically like an 8-bit like kind of redux pedal, as well as a sequencer. It's like basically putting an arcade into a guitar pedal. And then yeah, I have a bunch of different like delays and reverbs and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been kind of wanting to experiment more with analog sounds from pedals rather than like just using VSTs and plugins all the time. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to check out too this year. Yeah, so my transition from indie rock to lo-fi has been a long journey, and like, I don't know, I don't even really consider myself fully to be a lo-fi artist because my music is a little bit more broad than that. But I was doing indie rock for a really long time because I wanted to break out of classical and folk, which is where my roots really are. But then I realized that the older I got, I was listening to more hip hop and experimental electronic more than anything. And even as a kid, I remember like listening to old school hip hop that my brother would put on, and I would listen to like house music, and I loved it. I loved electronica so much, but I had no idea what it was about. And it wasn't for me because I was a classical violinist. So yeah, I transitioned from classical and folk to indie rock because I needed a way to break out of that. And then I transitioned from indie rock to like experimental electronic hip hop because it was what I was listening to, and it really just became a moment of like, I want to make stuff that I'm listening to and that I want to listen to. So yeah, it was just kind of like, just really hunkered down and did some research and practiced making beats every day. Still haven't stopped. I'll always be a student too. So with putting myself out there on social media, with my career, with my entire artistic livelihood, so much of it was about being held accountable. And really, it's a lot of it is like testing the waters of like electronic music and hip hop was never my forte, and it's something that I know so little about. So it's like you post it and you see how it goes and you see if people like it or not. And for me, that was also a really good way to kind of navigate what I was doing. And then on top of that, like, I am so big into community. I love people, I love hanging out with people, I love putting events together. And this was the quickest way to do that, is by putting yourself out there, making yourself known, even if it's not perfect, especially if it's not perfect, because then you're approachable, you know? And that's how I've met so many of my really good friends. And that's how I've like met my new like LA family in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, it still keeps me accountable, even with like the Sunday sessions and stuff like that. Every time I have musicians come on, like I have to make a new beat every week, at least. So what's next for me?
Dropping new music.
Yeah, always. So yeah, working on Neat Tape 2. I've been working on a lot of collaborative projects. I yeah, just kind of really taking the time to sit with my sounds, develop my sounds, and make sure that it's the evolution that I feel the most comfortable with, while also simultaneously making it uncomfortable and growing in that evolution, and just continuing to grow in that way. So my advice to people is it's a long process and it takes a lot of work. Never underestimate how much work it's going to take. And that doesn't mean that it's impossible, but just make sure that you know where your priorities are and that you're making content that you feel is worth sharing. And that also kind of includes like the growth process. I posted a lot of beats that were incomplete, not mixed, not mastered, not good. But to me, it was a growing process, and I felt like that was okay to post. But I also posted that knowing that I have a lot of work to do. So, keep working at it, keep going. My dad has this phrase where it's like the only way a business is going to go out of business is if, what's the phrase? It's like the only way that you're going to go out of business is if you stop doing business. And it's the same way on Instagram. Like the only way that you're going to stop growing, that you're going to stop getting better, that you're going to stop getting followers is if you stop posting and if you stop learning. So always make sure that you keep going and always be a student.